Healing begins when awareness becomes embodied, and the truth is no longer just believed, it is
Mm.
lived.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Voice of Impact, where belief meets action. Our podcast amplifies stories, systems, and solutions behind meaningful change. I'm your host, Robert Ndoping. Today's conversation invites us into a quieter kind of impact, one rooted in the body and the relationships and the courage to interrupt patterns that no longer serve us. My guest today is Gloria Lybecker, a relationship and consciousness coach, creative coach, and a founder of Healing You Sanctuary. Gloria supports women in transforming unconscious and generational patterns into embodied self leadership, where belief becomes lived truth and aligned action. Her work bridges somatic integration, relational healing, trauma informed neuroscience, authentic communication, and creative expression. She's a co-author of Cracking the Rich Code, Volume 15, where she shares her journey from silence to a soulful voice.
Mm.
Through transformational programs, immersive experiences, often alongside the wisdom of horses, podcasting, and music, Gloria creates spaces for people to come home to themselves.
Mm.
Gloria, we're happy to have you today on the Voice of Impact.
Oh, thank you, Robert. I'm honored to be here and have the conversation with you. Yeah.
Thank you, Gloria. So before we go deep into, the amazing work you're doing, I would love to start with you. What was your story? What led you into this work of healing and consciousness?
Hmm. Well, I'm being born into an environment um, hmm, where I walked the path of trauma, where I didn't feel accompanied or safe, and but at the same time, because I was raised in the country, we had animals, and particularly horses. And so my horse became my companion on my journey of life. And I really experienced something magical when I would just, go out and escape and just go spend the day on my horse. And that thread has stayed with me because it connected my heart with all of nature. And on my journey, then, through my lived experience, I'm the mother of 5 children. I, I I experienced something brand new. There was a different kind of quickening, a resolve within me to make a difference, to have an impact, to allow my children's lives um, to be more, for them to have access in a different way than I did. So I wanted to change that pattern, to recognize what's different, what needs to be different, and then to have the courage and the resolve to begin to apply what I learned. So one of my gifts that I discovered was that I could learn experientially. So through my experiences, I could recognize whether it served life or not, and I could choose to clothe myself in the courage I needed in the moment to choose a new path. And the horses helped me with that. Yeah.
I really enjoy the way you touch on how, growing up and some of those pieces. There's
Mm.
one piece which I know you work a lot on within your business, silence. What does silence look like for you before you found your voice?
Oh, well, for me, through the neuroscience lens, it was immobilization. It's where my nervous system would recognize a pattern in my environment that was threatening. And so I would basically just shut down. And because it was painful and it was something that I wasn't able to stay present with as a young one on my own, because when we're growing and developing, we need that surrogate prefrontal cortex. We need that co regulation. And if we don't have that, part of us becomes fractured and can split off and not be present. And so become silent and I'd smile, because I would do my best to become safe. I'd want to be invisible. And, so I really became compliant. I became more of a people pleaser. I really tuned into what other people's needs were so that I could really intuit them and provide them. So then maybe I'd be safe. So I was really seeking approval outside of myself rather than having a nurturing environment that taught me to look inward. Yeah.
Well, seeking approval outside of yourself instead of the one inwards. So, but was there a moment where awareness shifted into embodiment?
Oh, there's been several moments that has happened, especially as a mother. And but the most profound one I will name would be within the last 5, 6 years was with my oldest two grandchildren when my granddaughter Sierra she passed away from cancer at 24 years old. And it was so heartbreaking. She's such a bright spirit in the world. And then the tragedy of 3 years later, her younger brother took his life. And that really stopped my world. It stopped my world on many different levels because it revealed in my relationship with them where there'd been a fracture that I had not been able to be in close relationship with them for several years because of a fracture, because of my inability to stay present and have a voice and stay relational when I perceived that somebody was unhappy with me. And I had a lot of grief around that. And I basically took a big pause and I stepped back from my work for a period of time to really look inward of what is my path. And the gift that Sierra and Isaac have gifted me with is how important it is to recognize our soul's purpose and to have the courage to speak that in the world because there are others that are on that path that need to know the truth. And when I share the truth that I've been given, it illuminates that for others in their life because we are a collective. And in my experience, the soul's path is really, especially at this point in our world, making itself known for more people to wake up to the truth of who they are instead of the conformity of what the culture attempts to mold, but to break out of that pattern and to have the freedom to be honest in life and be authentic in life and to promote that in others. And it's more of a collaboration, it's not a competition because there's more than enough for everyone. We live in an abundant universe and we don't have to survive all the time. It's time to step into thriving and supporting one another to do so.
I agree with you. It's more of a collaboration and not a competition. And when people collaborate, they do great things and they change
Yeah,
things in different ways that we can really imagine.
yeah.
You speak about, transforming unconscious and generational patterns into embodied self-leadership. What does transformation actually look like in everyday life for you?
Well, it's recognizing when have I gone on autopilot or become unconscious and bringing myself back to presence, to the now, to awareness, to choice. And it's a practice, it's a constant practice. It's a way of really staying first in relationship with myself in order to be aware and recognizing my path as I navigate through the day. And so it's been a journey to develop my ability to stay present in that way. And for me, it's a very somatic practice because my body is my vehicle here for my soul. And when I'm able to pay attention to what my body's communicating, I'm able to stay aligned with my purpose more fully. I'm not perfect. It gets messy And that's okay. That sometimes is just part of the journey for me to continue to evolve. My own awareness is getting to know myself better and better, and not to judge it and make it wrong, but to stay in relationship with it as my body learns to stay more present with me rather than looking for danger all the time. It's a shift. There's holding that polarity of life and staying present with both of it. So not over identifying with any aspect, but with the wholeness of my life. And then really slowing it down to make that be really practical steps, because we live in a complex world, but to keep it simple. It's simple and complex at the same time. That's the polarity of the wholeness.
Yeah, you talk about body relationships. Somebody listening might be curious. How do patterns show up in the body and relationships?
Well, they can show up in a variety of ways depending on what one's lived experience has been. So, in my example, my patterns of behavior would show up as doing my best to please others, seeking approval outside of myself. Perhaps it is where we become more work focused. I'm trying to prove my worth and my value, and I'm going to be the best in my job. Um, so I'm become like a workaholic, you know. Perhaps I just want to always not just please other people, but I'm always subservient. So I never ever take care of myself, and I burn out. And so there's many different complexities for how that can show itself. Um, and it depends on the person. I want to hold that with a lot of care and gentleness because that's not wrong. That was learned behaviors. And until we can begin to recognize the impact of the imprint of where we were born into and the environments that impacted us, we can then begin to reclaim our truth of who we really are.
Yeah, Gloria, you've gone through a lot, especially like major losses in your life, and our hearts, go out to you because it's not easy, especially to
Mm.
lose people that were that close. Your own, I'll call it. But I want to use also this for somebody listening to understand uh, why embodiment is not just an insight, but
Mm.
essential for lasting change in your own experience and opinion.
Well, even more recently, it's a constant evolution. So for me, if my gut would clench, if I'd hold my breath, my shoulders would tighten. That's my body alerting me that I'm ready to flee. Or if I can't run away, then I'm going to just try to become invisible. So I immobilize. And so that's an alert that it feels as if danger's there. The nervous system learned that. Doesn't mean it's true. When I can use observation and I can begin to orient myself by looking around and naming like at least three things I see. I see my dog, I see my lamp, I see my table. It helps the body come back into the present moment because trauma, when it takes over, it puts a lens over all of your senses. And what you see is what I call the ever present past. It's not actually here now, but the body has the belief that it is because it sensed something that reminded it of that trauma. And so when you orient yourself, you can come back to the present moment. And those shadows from the past, they disappear or they dissipate and you can see through them. And you can then begin to become in choice. And for me, when you activate your heart, your your soul's purpose, when you can come into what you love, it really helps give you solid ground, roots into that, to where then you are able to then recognize your next step rather than being driven by those phantom patterns.
Yeah, you touch on a few things there, which really, it raises a curiosity.
Yeah.
And part of Some of this is also your work integrates trauma-informed awareness, neurobiology, semantics, and relationships, actually. So, from your perspective, how
Yeah.
do systems, especially family, culture, and society, shape the patterns that we carry?
Well, one of the biggest systems that can block progress, especially for women, is that social conditioning system. And it actually rewards that I've been talking about, where we abandon ourselves. We are not in service of our life, we're in service of everything else outside of us. And so then that's where we get praised for, accommodating others and being agreeable, but that doesn't fit neatly inside of that polite culture, right? So there's a lot of wellness systems also that they bypass the body. They may talk about healing, but when we don't include the nervous system, that neuroception of safety, that's the felt sense of it, and the ability to regulate and to pace ourselves, then if we're not speaking about that, we can accidentally recreate harm for people. So we need to be trauma informed. We need to include the body, that include the nervous system. So the system that I'm committed to co-creating in the world is one where the truth is safe to name, where boundaries are respected, and healing happens in relationship with one another, because we need one another. We were not created to do this by ourselves.
I agree. We need one another. We're definitely not created to do some of these things by ourselves. And that makes me want to ask you, where do conventional healing models fall short?
Well, in that space that we were just talking about a bit, where we don't include the whole self. It's not just up here about being smart in the mind. It's being aware of our wholeness, body, mind, and spirit, if you will. The wholeness of the being, and not just the human being, but all beings here on earth. The earth is our home. We all share that home. And we fall short if we're only thinking about humans. We need to think about all of life. It all matters. It truly does. And we fall short if we don't include the wholeness of life.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what did you as a person, have had to unlearn while fixing yourself and fixing others?
Well, one of the biggest things that I've had to learn is that I don't have to earn my right to take up space. And another thing that I needed to unlearn was, I can't get me wrong. I used to think I had to get it right all the time. And I looked outside of myself for what's right. You just tell me and then I'll do it, right? Right? It's like, no, no, just take a moment. Come back into your own sense of self. I needed to develop that sense of self. I needed to know that I mattered, that I matter just as I am, that I'm unique, and that I was born with innate gifts, and that it's a joy and a privilege to share them with others. And I'd learned what I had learned was that I didn't matter, that I had no value, I had no worth, and that I only could be accepted if I got approval outside of myself, or permission. Well, permission comes here, you know? And we do need, I also had to learn that I needed to speak up and voice my own experience, not as a victim, but as someone that I was victimized. That's a completely different world. I recognize what happened. I name the truth. I don't have to hide it. I'm not going to be silenced. I will speak up because I value life for all people. I'm not going to also blame what happened on others. I want to develop my ability to take self-responsibility for my life. And I can find the gems of what I've learned through the traumatic experiences I may have experienced, because that means that I'm able to accompany others in a way because I can stay present in them. I don't freak out. I don't over dramatize. It's like I can acknowledge tough times are tough, messy times are messy, painful times are painful. And I can stay present with that, which allows that co-regulation at a whole different level so that more people have that capacity and we don't have to be the walking wounded. We can thrive and we can stay present with all of life. And that's so important. It's so important. I'm so grateful for those that have walked alongside of me as I have been on my healing journey, which, it doesn't end. As we develop ourselves and evolve, we get to know ourselves deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah, you touched on a few things there. You talked about your own healing and you talked about, you know, staying present for others.
Mhm.
And I want to ask you, how has your own healing reshaped how you hold space for others?
Oh, well, it's by being able to stay present with what's happening in my viscera, what's happening somatically, what's happening and developing a language to a language to name it so I can support others to recognize it for themselves. But just, you don't have to name it for yourself. You just need to notice it and stay present with it. Maybe something just simple as it gets tight, it gets hot, it relaxes, it expands, it opens. Just what is it that you notice and what's it saying to you? Can you receive the message of wisdom from your body? And when I'm able to do that, it's a moment by moment thing, even the conversation with you. I'm constantly in this relationship. I have a relationship with my body that is like a constant companion that's always here, always now, but it's bigger than my body. For me, it's my soul. It's my own divine spirit, that spark of life that we all share with one another. And when I'm willing to stay open and listen and pause, take a moment, call a pause. I love to call pauses because it allows me to actually become more authentic, more real, and more in tune with my own truth in the moment of what's needing to be named and voiced in this moment. And what's allowed me to do is to actually reclaim my voice in a different way, which is through song, which is being willing to, in this last year, I've been recognizing the power of writing your story or expressing it. But for me, it was always challenging to put it in a story form. But I could speak it or I could sing it. And so I've begun writing more and more about what's it like somatically as you go through some of these things that feel messy or challenging or stuck. And how do you shift? How do you stay alive? How do you stay whole and real? And finding ways to express that in song that as I listen, it's like medicine for my own soul. And so, and that's one of the gifts. And in my past, I had the belief that I was nothing or that I couldn't hold a tune, or it's not true. And even if I only sing that for my own ears, that's okay. So it's not about pleasing other people. It's not about performance. It's not about being, quote, the best. It's about being authentic and being true to your path and saying yes to yourself, saying yes to life. And so I love music. I adore music. And my favorite place to sing it is out with my herd of horses. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful. Music, I think it fits the soul.
Mhm.
So I'm with you right there when it comes to music. I mean, you said so many, you presented so many solid points. We all know transformation is power,
Mhm.
but not always comfortable. What's something in your own journey that didn't unfold the way you expected? And what did that teach you?
Mm. Well, one of the things that didn't turn out the way I expected was when I was a mom. Well, I'm still a mom, but earlier on in my life, I was in a relationship that was really stressful and very conditioned. It was very similar to how I grew up as a young child because I kept repeating that pattern relationally, and I didn't know what I didn't know, and I kept thinking, how does this happen? Why does this keep happening? And I couldn't figure it out. And I thought, it just must be me, right? Well, then my oldest son was only just turned 15, and there was a conflict that happened within that family that I had at that time. And I sent him to live with his dad and stepmom. But in that, I thought it would be for a brief period of time. And then he didn't come back. And it was like everywhere I turned, I couldn't get people to understand. I just wanted to make the home life better so he could come back. And yet at the same time, he was modeling for me that you don't stay in an abusive environment. He had this strength and resolve within him as the masculine energy. We all have male and female energy within us. And he was actually modeling for me the masculine energy of standing in your truth and saying no. And at the time though, I was so devastated because I was really stuck in the blinders of my own lived experience. And I remember going out into the wheat fields and throwing myself on the ground and having a reckoning with God. This is not what I signed up for, because my heart felt broken wide open because my child had felt ripped from my life. And it felt worse than death because he was alive and I had no access. And that really began my soul path. It's like, okay, and I'm talking to God, I'm figuring you out, right? And what that really was is it started me on that deep inward journey because I was a fierce mama bear and nothing's going to keep me from my child. And today I have a very strong, beautiful relationship with each of my children. But, that firstborn, he does model this strength with a sense of humor and a gracious, giving heart. And, I, in my experience, my children each were born to me to teach me lessons about life, to grow myself, and how can I even become better. I'll always be their mother, and they'll always be my children. But those relationships are sacred. And instead of them being extensions of me, they are their own unique, vibrant, beautiful beings. And I'm so honored to know them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really brings a couple of things for me to mind. I mean, despite everything that has gone through, how do you stay regulated, grounded, while guiding others through, deep healing?
Well, for me, it's developing practices. If you don't practice like exercise, if you don't exercise regularly, you're going to lose your muscle tone. You're going to lose your stamina. You're going to, not be able to continue to do the things you love doing. The same is true with your heart. The same is true as with your soul. So, and as a singer, when I don't practice singing, then when I go to sing, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not hitting that note quite, am I? Well, because I didn't continue to exercise my vocal cords. I didn't exercise my heart in that way too. And so, with the emotional self and with the wholeness, I have a practice with the two, what I call the two trees, and that is the healing you method. And it's one that came to me with my youngest son when I was really wanting to be able to communicate in a, um, a really simplified way of communicating that's not as much words. My youngest had a lot of dysregulation. He had a lot of sensory overload. And so to find a way to communicate when he would, what I would call go limbic, where his body would be on fire and he couldn't How do you stay present? How do you stay with someone when they're in that level of pain? And so for me to really, that's what took me to the neuroscience, and it took me into energy medicine. And so there's a lot of really great models out there that I pulled from different ones to develop a practice to help me stay present. So really staying in tune to breath. Breath work is so powerful. Really brings you right into your own core. Really developing your ability to stay awake and aware and noticing what you notice in the now. So it's being very real and visceral. And as the horses have taught me, how do you also hold that space where you have both differentiation? I know what's me, I know what's you, but you also have linkage. So you can allow your intuition, you can allow your spirit, if you will, to guide you to energetically be connected and yet respectfully separate. So that's differentiation and linkage. And when I'm working with people and horses, I have more bodies that I'm actually observing and witnessing and paying attention to. So the importance of attending, really having that secure attachment, as for me, earned secure attachment. It's never too late to develop that within you, but to really pay attention to that. And so I have these practices for my own self-care where I nourish myself on a daily basis, but then having um, a kind of a loose but very solid at the same time plan for noticing when I need to take a little bit more time to ground myself, to nourish myself, to replenish myself, because I'm not going to help anyone else if I'm not fully present. So you need to take care of yourself in order to be able to be present with others. And also, the other thing that's really important is I'm not attached to what's going to happen when I'm working with somebody. I'm walking alongside of them as they are discovering their own answers that come from within them. I'm there to help reflect that to them, and the horses are as well. But to embody a container that can, in my experience, it magnifies the field to where they can see the truth. They can recognize it as it's reflected back to them in the representations in that moment. And then they can be empowered to take their next action. But I'm not here to tell anybody how to, quote, fix themselves or to heal. I'm here to accompany them because they have all the wisdom they need. They just need to discover it within them.
Yeah, they have all what they need. They just need to discover it within them, which is also, a very major lesson for someone. Um, what would you say to someone who knows something needs to change, but feels kind of stuck?
Mm. Well, I invite them to slow down, actually sit with the stuckness, get to know it, get to really feel into it. Hmm. And even to then recognize what it represents for them. Where is that pattern in their life? It may show up in more than one place. It depends on what the stuckness is. But we don't need to be in a hurry to, quote, fix anything or to change anything or to do anything to or with it when we can actually be present. We can begin to see what we couldn't see before. And if we're feeling, quote, stuck, we can't see something new. So maybe we're called to be with it, to learn from it, to maybe even experiment with it. What happens when I move here? What happens if I shift my body in a different way? The body's always communicating with us. And in the work with the horses' bodies also are communicating with us. And when we can see the relationship between our body and their body, or whatever may be showing up in the field, it's offering us different perspectives to begin to see through, or different, if you will, clothing we can try on and see how does this fit or how does that fit. And it's about staying in the present moment to learn. Um, and I like the exploration and discovery because we can only do that when we feel safe. So it's really important to have a container where Anything's possible. And so as a facilitator or a practitioner, I'm not attached to the outcome other than the person gets to explore what's showing up, what's real for them now, what is true for them. Because many times when people are stuck, nobody's they've been hurried out of it or they're thinking they should be doing something different. Not true. They're there for a reason. They're right where they need to be. Can they just relax and be there for just a moment? Yeah.
Yeah, uh, Gloria, I want you to say something to someone, something that was not asked today. Just a message to someone listening to us right now that needs a message, especially
Mm,
when it comes to that reawakening, that awareness of their inner self.
yeah. Well, you don't have to choose between being real and being safe. It's possible to be real and be who you are. You don't need to be somebody different than you are. Um, when you learn to stay present in your body and your truth and in your relationships first with yourself, your pain may not disappear, but it becomes purpose, you know, it becomes powerful and it becomes your ability to express love in action, to be in service. Yeah, that's pretty important, I find.
Thank you so much for that message, Gloria. So we have a tradition at the Voice of Impact, which is a wet die, and it has a couple of themes on it. And I'll read it for you just so that it makes it easy for you to get all of the six themes that we have on this wet die. So it's make a difference, rebuild,
Okay.
overcome, stronger, peace, and patience. So make a difference, rebuild, overcome, stronger, peace, and patience. And I'll invite you to choose two, one that speaks to your own journey, and then one for somebody listening.
Yeah. Um, well, in this moment, what's really resonating with me is for my journey, it's rebuild. It's, recognizing that I rebuilt my own relationship with myself, with my voice, and my capacity to stay in connection with others, with life. And, that's really been a powerful thread in my journey. And then also for our listeners today, I choose patience. Um, Healing, it requires pacing, you know, and when we allow patience, we take our time. We're not in a hurry. That's how our nervous system, it actually learns trust. And when we develop that trust from the inside out, we can then rebuild. And so that's important.
Two very powerful themes there that you chose. So, Gloria, let's say somebody's listening to us right now, really wants to connect with you, wants to learn more about the work you do. How
Mm.
can they best reach you?
Well, I have a website at glorialybecker.com, and I also am on social media. And so you'd be able to find me there. And I have my own YouTube channel. It's Gloria Lybecker there too. And so I would invite you to reach out. There's on my website, people can sign up, and I've created a free course purposely to support people right where they are and for them to be able to have an experience of what it might be like to journey along with me accompanying them. I just want people to have as many resources as possible. Oh, and they could also look for me. I've got a couple releases out on Spotify or iTunes. And again, my name, Gloria Lybecker.
Gloria, thank you for your presence, for the depth that you provided to us today, and for reminding us that healing isn't something we rush, it's something we
Mm,
practice. Today's conversation reminded us that impact doesn't always happen in a very loud way. Sometimes it happens quietly in the body, in relationships. And we also need that courage to come home to ourselves. To the person listening, your awareness matters, your healing matters, and your embodied voice also matters.
Mm.
Thank you so much, Gloria, for creating time to sit with us today and share from your heart, from your experience to our audience.
Oh, thank you, Robert. I just want to acknowledge that your voice has such a quality that is just healing in and of itself. So thank you for this opportunity to be with you.
That's a compliment I'll take any day, anytime. Thank you so much, Gloria. I really appreciate that. So, for the listeners, we're Ndoping and co-performance system designers. We're strategy coaches, and we help organizations build what we call performance systems that are sustainable, that are clear, and that can operate effectively for output. This has been the Voice of Impact. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep using.
And it's very simple. Empower as many people as possible. Empower as many leaders as possible. Touch as many, professionals as I can. Be able to make a difference.